Good evening, Captain Vijay Kumar, MMA, for this opportunity. It comes to me once in 3 months. I just want to correct something that Group Captain Vijay Kumar said. He said that all three of us are voracious readers. Yeah, that's true. But we're also forced to read because we have to do this program, right? So in some sense, we love this because it also forces us to read more. So that's also the truth. It's not just the other way around. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity, and we just love. And of course, I get the opportunity of roping in 2 victims every time. And thanks to, I'm going to call him Krish, just for simplicity's sake during the evening, because there's Ramesh here. Maybe Krish is what we're going to kind of refer to, Ramesh, with your permission. So what we intend to do in the next, say, 45-50 minutes is to give you a quick rundown on what this book is. And one of the tenets that I use when we do a book review is not to give you a verbatim of the book, because we want you to go and buy the book and read it. So we won't give you secrets that the book contains by itself. But what we would attempt to do is look at the key aspects of the book through the journey of our own life and professional career, and hopefully come up with some interesting insights that's not found in the book, but that's unique to us. That said, I owe an explanation to everybody as to why this book was chosen, because that's also where it all starts. So, yes, the hero makes his appearance. Yes, Ramesh, welcome. Welcome. We're just getting started. So, we live in a world today where there are 2 wars simultaneously happening. The Russia war, and there is a war in the Middle East. There is a new president in the White House. There is innumerable number of things that are beyond our understanding or control. To put it mildly, it's chaos out there, right? Yet, we have to live life, we have to go on, and we have to make sure that we all prosper in whatever we attempt to do. So it's a huge challenge, and that's where this topic, this book title, kind of caught my attention somewhere, and said, I've never heard this word anti-fragile. All through school and college and growing up, we always come with this duality, right? Right, wrong, and there's opposites. So we always grew up with the idea that if there's something that is fragile, the opposite must be robust. And that's the whole way in which our thought process was. Until I read this book, I never knew that there could be a concept called anti-fragile. And that's where this whole concept is so energizing and interesting to me. But first, before I go, this is the 3rd book of Nassim Taleb that I'm reading. I've read 2 other books, very, very interesting author. You should read. He's actually a Lebanese American by nature. He's a mathematical mathematician. He's an options trader. Obviously, if you're good in mathematics, and you can play the bridge, and you can be an options trader as well. But he's chosen to be an options trader. He's an author and a speaker and a teacher. So all this rolled into one is what Taleb is. Some breakthrough ideas. His first book was something that kind of was very, very interesting as well. Black Swan was his first book. And then Fooled by Randomness is another book that I have read. Very interesting books. But Antifragile was a little bit different in its genre, but all the same very, very interesting. But I'm going to give you a quick start. I have 2 important guests here. I want to kind of grab their knowledge as well. But I'm going to introduce the way Taleb introduces the concept of anti-fragile is very interesting. He says, all along we know, like the duality, right? But he says it's actually a trilogy. There are 3 aspects to it, right? There is one which is fragile, the other is robust, and robust is not the other extreme. He says it's a middle, and then you have anti-fragile. And his explanation is fragile is something that collapses or kind of breaks down on a random event happening. If there is some uncertainty or some event, adverse event, it collapses quite easily. Like a glass. We can imagine a glass that kind of collapses. Robust is something that does not have that trait. It does not get diminished or destroyed immediately. It holds on. It has the power to kind of continue to retain its character. That's what robust is. But he talks about the third, which is, can uncertainty, can adverse events kind of empower something to grow bigger? Can things go better in uncertainty is really the question. Can we assimilate our organization, our body, our mind to get into a frame where uncertainty or events that are far beyond our comprehension, when they happen, we are actually going to benefit out of it? How do we kind of prepare is where the whole story is. And he narrates n number of examples. One example that I think is kind of worthy, in which I could relate to myself, is when COVID kind of event happens, some of the people who are in the corporate ladder at the highest level of salary bucket, and if you're typically a manufacturing company that's going through difficult times, then these are people who will find it very difficult to stay on because their cost to their enterprise is reasonably high and there's no production. So they are really, in that sense, from a vocation perspective, they are very fragile. But if you take a example of a taxi driver, right? He does not depend on one person for his money. In a day, he'd probably do 20 trips, right? So he is a lot more robust as a profession from that perspective. But really, if you look at people who are making their business out of the internet, maybe a YouTuber in today's parlance, has actually been benefited because of COVID, because everybody moved from a significantly face-to-face environment to an online environment at that time. And people who were doing really ordinary stuff, weren't doing great financially at that time, really benefited out of something like a COVID. So he says, in every situation you will be able to find people who are fragile, robust and things. Not just people, activities, organizations, processes, every aspect that you look around can get kind of categorized in this form. So it's a very interesting book from that perspective. It gives us a whole lot of scenarios he talks about. And, I can go on. Like I said, I love the mic, but I'm going to pause here. I'm going to get Krish to kind of talk about what are his initial thoughts about the book and some of the ideas that appeal to him most, and if there are stories from his side which he can share with us. Over to you, Krish.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Babu, for introducing me to this wonderful book. And thank you, MMA, for this opportunity to share and from the read and then share the life experiences, right? And I have a unique, I don't know whether it's a randomness of, because after reading this book, I'm looking at everything as random, right? And my name, I shared first name with one person and the second name with other person, right? So, though there's a little bit spelling here and there, but then, the book has been, you rightly said, Babu. I mean, I think I read a lot of books, and I have a problem that I don't go to, my wife stops me if I just get into any airport and all, get into a book. So I said, no, don't go, because the moment I go, I'll get 2 or 3 books eventually. And I have this habit of reading 2 books at the same time, okay, and 2 movies at the same time, obviously in OTT or something. But always it has been a pleasure, but this was pressure. We had to read that book and be ready for this, but then it was a wonderful book, and for me it was a complete eye-opener from several aspects. One is that the concept itself, like anti-fragile, For me, it was first time I was getting introduced to the phrase anti-fragile. Right from childhood, our parents will say, "Don't touch this, don't touch that." I mean, we are always guarded, and that's how we are. Be it personal lives or if we are professional lives, right? That's how we are grow up and act on that. So from that point of view, we always also at the same time see that there are adversaries that happen, and whenever there is a crash, stock market crash, and not that everything is lost, and that's where the new companies and all. We know that 2008. I don't want to name the companies. So these 10 companies who are top now were not there in 2008 or before. We all know that. So some companies do that. So for me, that concept itself, never thought this from that angle. So this book actually forced me to see it from that angle. And one particular sentence, I was reading it. It basically summed up the entire book for me. It said that a wind blows out the candle, but energizes the fire. Okay, so the wind is there all the time. You can't stop it. So I see that you can see that as an adversary, or you can see that as an opportunity knocking you. You need to choose whether you want to be a candle or you want to be the fire. Okay, and I think that's where Taleb goes through the entire book, giving several examples, many, very, very relatable in our own personal lives and our professional lives. Before I hand over for the next round, because Babu spoke about COVID. COVID is a wonderful experience, once in a lifetime experience, right? It happens, and how do you plan for it? And you really can plan for it, right? And things like that. So I will share some, professional at least experience. So about a couple of weeks before COVID happened, so we all knew that what was happening. I mean, a couple of weeks before the lockdown happened, in India, we already know what was happening and things like that. So little bit of, wisdom we had in terms of how do we prepare our teams and things like that. We started making people working from remote. And believe me, it was not easy, because I don't know how you all will know. The one thing that changed in IT before and post COVID is that before COVID, majority of the IT companies had something called as desktop computers. Okay, we would have forgotten desktop computers after COVID, because all have become laptops now, right? So we had so many desktops which you need to ship to their locations, remote locations and things like that. So we planned that for a 2 week, and we were not planning for the what you call the lockdown and COVID. We were planning for what we call it as a BCP. We had how business continuity plan, or 2 days, 3 days, something happens. Then what happened? This COVID happened, and then as a result, we were already had all the computers in individually everybody's homes, and they started working. 1 week, 2 weeks, people enjoyed not working and things like that, figuring out what is going to happen. Office is going to work, not work, and things like that. After that, people slowly started working, and the first people who came knocking the door in my company, you know who? Customers. Business has to run. Cannot stop. Okay. And I can tell you that during that 1.5, 2 years, one particular division grew literally astronomically, because we were ready. And they came with 100. We never hired 100 people. We were hiring about maybe maximum 40, 50 at a time. 100, can you hire? First time we are doing everything first time. Hiring remote, interview remote, assessment remote, onboarding remote, everything, right? Kind of thing. So that helped. And with this particular company, the reason I'm saying this customer is that we were always number 2 as a vendor. And this actually made us the number 1. Primarily on a factor that we are flexible, we can, work on that and things like that. Second to it, as Babu mentioned earlier, lot of uncertainty that is happening on the geopolitical side. Again, 2 years back, one company, gave about a order worth of, because the IT company, right? But order, we don't talk in terms of rupees revenue. It also headcount, because it's a services company, right? 75 member team, just transitioning from one vendor in Ukraine to us. Okay. So we benefited. What I'm saying that there were things that were happening and how you can be ready and things like that. So there's more to share, but then I will stop here.
Yes. Let's get the model looking Ramesh here. So, Ramesh, we just started. So your initial thoughts on the book, and I know I must share. When I love the title, but the denseness of the book I got to know only later, after I was going to read, and I really felt bad for both these guys, because out of favor they agreed to read, and then you look at the book, it's kind of really, Talib is such an academician. Everything is referenced to an index and so on and so forth. So thank you, Ramesh, for kind of.
Thank you, Babu, for pulling me into this and pulling my leg as well for coming late. So thank you, Ramesh Krishnamurthy, for sharing the dais with me, and thank you, MMA, for inviting us for such a wonderful opportunity. So first, about this book, I mean, when Babu, actually, we were talking about in the last 9 months, we were trying to connect together for this one. The first time we wanted to connect happened to my son's birthday, so I said I can't come because I promised him to take him out. So the next time I was traveling, and then this time I made the point that I just cancelled everything, whatever it is, I have to be here. So, but the book, what he gave, actually, I thought I should have taken the other two options what he had given. It's a heavy book, I mean, for the matter. So, what I did was, I mean, I'm just going to straight away go into my learnings, which I can share, because, so when I normally read a book, I mean, I make some markings, but this book I had to jot down points because I couldn't go back to the same page. So there were a few situations where I could relate to what he was mentioning about being fragile, robust, and anti-fragile. I mean, he summed up pretty nicely. So I'm going to pull up 3 situations of being a fragile, robust, and anti-fragile, which is actually will help people to think in that way. Because what this book will do to you is subconsciously it might make you think in a different direction, which you have not thought that way when you encounter a situation. I think so the heaviness of the book will actually, that's why maybe he has done it so heavily, because it would subconsciously move you to think in that kind of a direction where how you can make the best out of the bad situation, or how you cannot be fragile though you think you are. So the first point what I looked into was, when you think that you have already figured out everything, and that's where you should actually introspect. So the point at which you say that, okay, I have figured out everything, and that's a kind of a fragile environment, what he says. And that's where, though you know, the best part is you go and get conscious. I think so I'm good without a mic. Actually.
No, there is an audience online.
Right, okay. So check. So when you think you have already figured out a business plan or an action plan, and you think that is complete, and that's where this book will make you think, have I figured it out all? Is there any scenarios which I have not? So there were one scenario, I mean, it was pre-COVID. So we would never, I mean, I'm not going to talk about this fragile thing is pre-COVID, basically. So I was presenting my project to the Railway Minister, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. And we also know that Mr. Narendra Modi is going to be there for the event. So we had to carry our whole vending machine. I mean, that's what we created. We had applied for a patent then. So this has to work in that particular scenario in a hall in Haryana. So we had to take all the way from Chennai to Haryana in a truck. And actually, we were a startup, so we didn't have that much of funds. So somewhere I had to drive down, somewhere I had to be in the truck and then ensure that things are okay. Because it's a sensitive equipment, and it has got a lot of sensors around. So even if somebody handles it in the wrong way, if it doesn't work at the time when I have to click a button, it has to work. So we were so cautious about, and at the time when I was able to read this book, at that time say how fragile we were in that scenario. Like if anything could have brought us down to zero. So, and that time when I had read that book by then, we would have had a different perspective of how this can be done, how we could have fixed things, and because we were going in a single perspective, but this book will make you think in 3 different angles. I mean, that's whether you are in a fragile moment, or you robust there, or you have to get anti-fragile, which is anti-fragile is something which I'm going to tell maybe during the course of the conversation. So this I will stop with the fragile environment. We finally got the mission to Haryana, and this was a railway innovation meet. Basically, what new innovations can come into Indian Railways. So there were many signal processing, there were many rakes which were coming, and we were selected based on the food and beverage, what innovation we could do, because in railway the food was not safe. So we had come up with a machine which can actually bring food untouched from the kitchen to the consumer. There is nobody touching the food. So that was where we got selected. But when we got the machine there, and finally we were presenting it to Mr. Modi, and I actually bought a dokla because we found out that he likes dokla. So we had actually figured it into the machine, and we made him do the order. And finally the sensor didn't work. So he actually was very appreciative of it. I mean, at the moment he had to stop for 10 seconds because holding him there for 10 seconds because there were so many other things happening after that. So, and then the moment he left afterwards, and then we had to just check a query, and then that sensor worked, and the food just dropped out. And I didn't hesitate. I mean, I just took it out and I said, this is what come out, you want to try? And he laughed it and then said, okay, fine, you move on. So, in terms of being fragile in an environment, and that where I was able to relate how, in my real scenario, how fragile we were, and how we didn't think about getting into an anti-fragile mode or being a robust there because we were startups. But with this book, I mean, any people who want to venture out or anything, this mindset, I mean, leave out the heaviness of this book, or even the kind of references where you will just get into some stoicism in philosophy, or getting into multiple tangents he has pulled you into the book, where it will look like you are going into a different multiverse. I mean, that is the kind of way he has written the book. So that is something I would relate to, and being fragile is no more after you read this book, because you have to get conscious with this book, whether I am fragile there and what you need to do to get better of the situation. So that I will stop with the fragile, then maybe I'll come back.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramesh. You know, this book also talks about moving from fragile to anti-fragile, and from anti-fragile to fragile as well. And one of the things I could relate was a concept that he talks about as naive intervention. And I remember very distinctly that I have a friend from college, and every year, the people who have migrated to US find a reason to come back to Chennai in December because it's the Kacheri season, right? So most of them land up here. And every December, the moment he lands up, for 2-3 days, the man will be in bed, because some virus or the other will catch up to him, right? So I was I was reading a nice thing that guy had said, that anti-fragility is that when you don't take medicines, when you are not always in a very secure environment, and you allow your body to interact with the other elements around, so that it builds immunity in you. That's anti-fragility. Whereas, as humans, we are born with anti-fragility. Our body is meant to fight germs, fight most of the things that are around us. Whereas, he says most, people or parents, young mothers for their children, they do an overdose of, antiseptic or, all those problems, which makes the child fragile. The child will tend to fall sick more often because of any exposure, as compared to allowing the child to go through a period where it on its own develops its immunity. So he talks about the same thing, right? So what Ramesh, Krish was referring to, the global financial crisis in the US, 2008. The best thing America could have done at that point in time is, it's easier said than done, but to allow a certain financial system that didn't do really good to collapse, and then for a new order to come up. what they ended up doing is that they ended up subsidizing it, which makes the economy even more fragile. If you look at economists today, there will be equally divided between two sides. One side saying America is doing really well economically. The other side saying America is precariously poised at the end of a cliff from which, because their external debt is some $38 trillion, it's kind of mind-boggling amount of debt that they're sitting on. And it started at 2008 onwards trying to get the economy to revive. So there are lots of ways in which in our daily life we make anti-fragile things more fragile. Economy is one such thing. Health is another such thing. So there are lots of things. And this, he terms it as naive interventions. And when I read this whole concept, I could recollect in my mind all these elements wherever, we could observe these. Trying to do good and achieving exactly the opposite effect is what, and you could relate it to a lot of my own personal experiences, I thought. Is there something like that you could relate, Krish?
100%. I think, so one or the other thing that, taking the same thing that Babu that you mentioned, Taleb mentioned somewhere in the book that when men fight or lose the last war, the nature will fight its next. Okay. Quite wonderfully said, and as Babu said, nature finds itself, the nature, the how it is made and things like that. I'll just recall a book that I was reading, a very, very wonderful book called as The Brain That Changes Itself. So very, very wonderful book on how the brain works. And I could relate that to one concept that first time I read in this book. It's called as iatrogenics. Okay. Which is like, I was finding what is this? It's basically like it is induced problem by someone who is trying to help you. Okay. Most of the time he is explaining that with some medical thing, right? You go to a doctor, you are not okay, then you are given some medicine, and then because of that medicine you have a side effects and things like that, right? I could relate that in my personal life. Okay. My mother started complaining. She was at that time maybe 76. Now she's 84. She started complaining that she's not able to see from the right eye for about a couple of seconds, and we just ignored. I said, okay, it's all okay, no problem. And then next day she said, it has become more frequent, in the sense every 15 minutes, half an hour, it is happening like that. Unlike me and others, those generation, they're very particular about, they note the time and intervals, right? So then we took little serious and said, how long? He said, no, 1 second, 2 second. So we go to bathroom, restroom, and become suddenly blind. What do I do? She has got the fear. We took her to the doctor. Obviously, the first doctor we take is basically an eye specialist. The eye specialist checked it and said, it's perfectly fine. No problem. And then we came back and said, no, it's old age. You don't worry. You are all okay. Doctor has said, okay, you are okay. And she said, okay, contented with that. And the doctor said, I should be okay. Came back, and after next day again, it started more frequent. And from a 2 seconds to it became 4 seconds. 4 to 5 seconds. And 4 to 5 seconds at that age is quite, you're really literally blind by that, right? Then we thought that we should take to somebody suggested by you to take to a neurosurgeon. So we took to a neurosurgeon, and then they took the scan, and in MMM they said that, okay, we need to do a scan, and they need to check and find out what is the block level. And the block was 100%. And the doctor said that if it is 100%, I can't do anything. I can't put a stent. If it is even as 90%, we'll put a stent. The story of that is that they found it's 100%. We are all praying that, it should not be 100%. And the result came, it was 100% block. So we went with the doctor. Doctor said, no worries. Very nice doctor. Wrote some 2 or 3 medicines. Take it for 3 months and come back and see. My mother asked, if I take it, it will be okay. Okay, no problem. It will be okay. She has religiously not missed one tablet, all the 3 tablets, eating day in, evening and all. After 2 months, after the 1 month, she was slightly better. After 2 months, the thing was gone. And we went to the doctor to take the appointment, and the doctor said, looked at it, and I also was there and looked at it and said, it's fine. Okay. She's all fine. God is kind. Amma ninga seri aitinga. I hope everybody understand Tamil. So, Amma ninga seri aitinga. That is, you're gone 100% right. So, nothing to worry. வீட்டுக்கு போயிடுங்க. கடவுள் தான் இது சொல்லணும். நீங்க தான் கடவுள்னா நீங்க தான் கடவுள், நீங்க தான் சரி பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. சரி, we came. The interaction was like 2 minutes. And it was one of the doctor where you will not get appointment easily. 2 months it takes. A lot of people standing outside, we came out. Something was not okay with me. It was 100% block. You gave some medicine. It's 100% right. You're saying it's cured. Then what happened? I went inside. Secretary said, you can't go inside. Several people. I forced myself, went inside. Doctor, what is, can you please explain me? What, how, your medicine or what? Is it really you want to understand? Made me to sit down and took a white sheet and explained. That's the nature we are talking. That the brain, the connection from the nerve, from the eye to the brain, the signal was not going. The other the left side, the nerve that goes, it senses and travels all the way and supports it. Then I said, doctor, but your medicine also. And then he laughed and said, do you know what medicines I gave? Only to give her, your mother, a psychological thing. It's only small medicine and blood thinner kind of thing. My medicine has not cured. And if you had given any medicine, you would have gone worse. Excellent example of iatrogenics. So that's one thing I thought I should share.
Yes, Ramesh. Something about this book, some topic that resonated very deeply with you from your own personal experience.
Okay, so here I'm going to share something which is, we tried to help and which things have gone wrong, which is iatrogenics philosophy.